Runaway bride takes refuge in a stranger's car only to find he's the billionaire her family chose for her. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. Rain poured down in heavy sheets over the city, soaking everything in its path. Headlights blurred through the storm as a white figure stumbled across the road. Her wedding dress clung to her skin, mud streaking the hem, mascara running down her cheeks like bruised rivers. She was running, not from love, but from a deal written in gold ink and sealed with her family's signature. Her name was Lila Monroe, the only daughter of one of New York's oldest business dynasties. Tonight, she was supposed to marry a billionaire chosen by her parents, a perfect merger of two empires, a marriage of status, not soul. But when she saw the contract disguised as a wedding vow, something inside her broke. Her heels snapped on the pavement. She kept running, breath fogging in the cold night air. The rain made it hard to see, hard to breathe, but she did not stop. Every honking car, every flash of lightning only pushed her forward. A set of headlights cut through the downpour. A black luxury car slowed beside her. The window rolled down just enough for a deep voice to cut through the noise. Are you out of your mind? Get in before someone runs you over. And in Massau water said, in a nostadeds when a stop besa, in my life even lane and I miters. Without thinking, Lila yanked the door open and slid inside, her dress trailing water onto the leather seats. She gasped, shivering, clutching her chest. Thank you. I needed to get away. The driver looked at her for a long moment, the dashboard lights reflecting off sharp cheekbones and eyes that were calm but unreadable. He handed her a clean handkerchief from the console. You are drenched. Take a breath before you pass out. His voice was deep, controlled, with the kind of authority that came from years of command. Lila finally looked up and froze. Even under the dim light, his face seemed familiar, too familiar, but it could not be. She had never met him. Had she? Do I know you? She whispered, her voice trembling. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. Not yet. She blinked, confused. I am sorry, I should not be here. I just needed to leave that place. Your wedding? He said quietly. You ran. Her head snapped toward him. How do you know that? He did not answer. Instead, he pulled the car into motion, the wipers slicing through the rain. Because everyone in Manhattan knows about the Monroe wedding tonight. The runaway bride is trending before the cake is even cut. Lila's heart pounded. Then why are you helping me? He glanced at her again, his jaw tightening. Because sometimes people deserve to run. The car turned onto a quiet road outside the city, lined with tall pines and fog curling like smoke. Lila pressed her forehead against the window, her breath leaving faint circles on the glass. The silence between them grew thick, charged with questions neither dared to ask. Finally, she spoke. You do not even know my name. I do, he said softly. Lila Monroe. Her pulse stuttered. Then, who are you? For a moment, he said nothing. The rain eased, and the car slowed as they approached a gated estate. Through the mist, the grand silhouette of a mansion appeared, lights glowing like fire through glass. He looked at her then, not coldly, but with a truth that made her breath catch. My name is Ethan Hale, he said. Your parents wanted you to marry me. The words hung between them, sharp as thunder. Lila's lips parted, but no sound came out. The man she had just trusted, the stranger who had pulled her from the storm, was the very billionaire she had run away from. And for the first time that night, she realized the real story was only beginning. Lila sat in stunned silence as the car rolled through the gates, tires gliding over the slick cobblestone drive. The mansion loomed ahead, an expanse of marble, glass, and shadow. Every light was on, as if the house itself had been waiting for her return. Ethan stopped the engine, but did not move. The rain tapped gently on the roof now, steady and relentless. She finally found her voice. You knew who I was the whole time. Ethan turned his head slightly, his expression calm but unreadable. It was hard not to. The entire city is talking about the missing Monroe bride. Lila's throat tightened. Then why did you not take me straight home? My parents are probably calling every police station by now. He leaned back, folding his hands loosely over the steering wheel. Because you did not look like someone who wanted to go home. Her jaw trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of everything she had escaped. You do not understand. That wedding was not about love. It was a transaction. My father wanted a merger. My mother wanted headlines. They never asked what I wanted. Ethan's gaze softened just enough for her to see a flicker of empathy beneath his composed surface. I understand more than you think. He opened the car door and stepped into the drizzle, walking around to open her side. Come inside, you are freezing. The foyer swallowed her whole. It smelled faintly of cedar and rain. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting reflections across the marble floor. She hesitated at the threshold, still clutching the torn veil in her hands like a lifeline. Ethan gestured to a waiting housekeeper, who appeared silently. Please prepare a guest room and something warm to eat. The woman nodded and disappeared down the hall. Lila stood motionless, the enormity of the moment settling in. She had run from her family, from her own wedding, only to end up under the same roof as the man she was supposed to marry. Ethan's voice broke the silence. You can stay here tonight. I will not call your parents. But tomorrow, we will talk. She met his eyes, uncertain. Why would you help me after what I did? You were humiliated in front of everyone. His lips twitched slightly. Do you really think I wanted that wedding any more than you did? That startled her. You did not? He exhaled, walking toward the massive fireplace and lighting it with a single strike. Our families made the deal years ago. I agreed because it was easier than fighting the entire board of my company. A perfect image, a perfect alliance, everyone wins. Except us. The fire crackled between them, throwing gold light across his face. In that glow, he looked less like a billionaire and more like a man quietly carrying his own cage. Lila whispered, So we were both trapped. Ethan looked up, his voice low. Seems that way. It bracing to Dell for rating out, Rawled. The housekeeper returned with a blanket and a tray of tea. Lila accepted them quietly, her fingers brushing Ethan's for the briefest moment. Something about his steadiness grounded her. She sat near the fire, sipping the tea slowly. I thought you would hate me for running. He shook his head. You did what I should have done years ago. For a long time, they sat without speaking. The rain softened into mist outside, and the fire's warmth filled the silence between them. Lila's eyelids grew heavy, exhaustion catching up at last. Ethan noticed. You should rest. The guest room is ready. She nodded, setting down the cup. Thank you for not judging me. I do not believe in judging people for wanting freedom, he said simply. As she walked toward the staircase, she glanced back at him. He stood by the window, one hand in his pocket, watching the rain blur the world beyond the glass. For a moment, she saw the same loneliness she felt reflected in him. In her room, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blanket neatly folded beside her. The torn veil lay in her lap, still damp. Her thoughts swirled her father's fury, the paparazzi's flashing cameras, the whispers of betrayal, and Ethan Hale, the man she was supposed to marry but barely knew. Downstairs, Ethan poured himself a glass of whiskey. The amber light flickered against his wristwatch, the one engraved with the Hale family crest. He had built empires, negotiated billion-dollar contracts, and walked through scandals without blinking. Yet tonight, the sight of Lila running barefoot into the storm haunted him. Maybe, he thought, freedom looked exactly like that raw, desperate, unplanned. He looked toward the staircase where her shadow had disappeared and murmured to the empty room. Perhaps it is time to stop living by contracts. Upstairs, Lila pulled the blanket over herself and closed her eyes, unaware that her life had already begun to change in the house of the man she once refused to marry. The rain eased outside, leaving only the faint hum of the city in the distance and the quiet rhythm of two people who had finally stopped running. Morning light spilled through the tall windows, painting soft gold across the white walls. Lila woke to the unfamiliar stillness of the mansion, the kind that belonged to people who never worried about bills or noise. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the events of the previous night crashed back her escape. The car, Ethan Hale, the truth. A quiet knock sounded at the door. Miss Monroe, a voice said. Breakfast is served in the east dining room. Lila glanced at her reflection in the mirror. Her hair was still tangled, her dress wrinkled from sleep, but she looked more alive than she had in months. She took a deep breath and went downstairs. Ethan was already seated at the long table, dressed in a dark shirt with his sleeves rolled neatly. The morning paper lay folded beside his coffee. He looked up as she entered, his expression unreadable but calm. "Good morning," he said. Lila hesitated. "Good morning. I hope I did not intrude last night." "You did not," he replied, setting his cup down. "You looked like you needed a place to stop running." She sat across from him, her eyes drifting to the spread of food she could hardly touch: fresh fruit, warm croissants, coffee that smelled like another world. "I should leave," she said quietly. "The longer I stay here, the worse this will get." In Forlis Saft in Helber, Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Leave and go where? The press is outside your parents' estate. Every headline says the same thing: runaway bride, disgraces Monroe family." Her chest tightened. "They will destroy me." "They already tried," he said. "You survived." Lila looked up sharply. "You sound like you know what that feels like." Ethan gave a faint, humorless smile. "I have been in this world long enough to know that survival is a quiet rebellion. You do not win by fighting louder. You win by standing still and letting them choke on their own noise." For the first time, she almost smiled. "That sounds like something a billionaire would say." He met her eyes evenly. "It sounds like something a man who is tired of pretending would say." Silence stretched between them. The morning light caught in his hair, softening his edges. There was something disarming about seeing him this way, not the untouchable CEO, but a man speaking truth without armor. Ethan broke the silence first. "I have a proposal. Stay here until the situation settles. No contracts, no expectations. Just time." Lila frowned. "Time for what?" "To figure out who we are when no one is watching." Her heart skipped, unsure whether to trust his sincerity or fear it. "You make it sound simple." "It is not," he admitted, "but it is honest." She studied him for a moment. The idea of staying frightened her, yet the thought of leaving frightened her more. "All right," she said softly, "but only for a few days." "Agreed," Ethan said, rising from the table. "My staff will respect your privacy. If you need anything, tell them. Otherwise, I will be in my office." Ling Sing. As he left the room, Lila watched his back, tall and steady, disappearing into the corridor of glass and light. She exhaled slowly, realizing that for the first time, no one was telling her what to do. Outside, the storm had passed. The gardens shimmered under the sun, raindrops glistening on the leaves. She walked to the window, touching the cold glass with her fingertips. Freedom still felt fragile, like something that could vanish if she breathed too loudly. Behind her on the table, a folded newspaper caught the wind from the open door. The headline read, "Monroe heiress, missing sources, claim wedding partner, refuses to comment." Lila turned toward it, her gaze lingering on Ethan's photo printed beneath the words. He looked distant, controlled, almost lonely. For reasons she could not explain, her heart ached for him. And in that quiet ache, she realized this house was no longer a place to hide. It was the beginning of something neither of them had planned. The following days moved quietly, like a song played too softly to end. Lila kept mostly to herself, walking through the garden in the mornings and sketching by the window in the afternoons. The air around the mansion felt both safe and heavy, filled with unspoken truths that lingered between her and Ethan. He was everywhere yet nowhere at once. She would see him crossing the hall with his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and precise. At dinner, he asked about her comfort, never about her plans. The distance between them was polite, careful, deliberate until the day it cracked. It began when the news reached the press that the Monroes had declared Lila's disappearance a family emergency. Her father's public statement painted her as unstable, driven by nerves. The lie spread fast, echoed by socialites who loved the taste of scandal. Lila found the article on her phone that morning, her hands shaking as she read. "Unstable," she whispered. "He called me unstable." Ethan looked up from his laptop, his jaw tightening. "They are trying to control the story. It is what powerful families do when they lose control of a person." Her voice rose. "I am not a person to them, Ethan. I am a signature, a deal they could not close." He closed the laptop and stood. "Then let me help you rewrite the deal." Her eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" He hesitated for a moment before answering. "We can use their own rules against them. If we announce that the wedding was postponed, not canceled, The press will turn their attention away from the scandal. You can stay here until the world stops watching. Lila shook her head. You want me to lie again? Pretend I am still your fiancé? It would not be forever, he said calmly. It is just strategy. She laughed bitterly. Strategy? You sound like my father. That hit deeper than she meant. Ethan's expression darkened, but his voice stayed quiet. If you would rather go back to them, I will not stop you. The silence between them turned cold. Lila looked away, fighting the burn behind her eyes. I do not want to go back. I just do not want to live in another cage. Ethan took a step closer, his tone softer now. Then let us build something different. Together, or not at all. Something in his voice broke her guard. For the first time, she saw the man beneath the empire. Tired, lonely, yet sincere. She whispered, together. He nodded once. Then we start today. And we all as one of their own. That afternoon, his publicist released a statement. Miss Lila Monroe and Mr. Ethan Hale have mutually agreed to postpone their wedding due to private family matters. The gossip world calmed overnight. Reporters lost interest. The story became yesterday's news. But for Lila, it was not about headlines anymore. It was about the quiet shift between them, the way he looked at her across the breakfast table, the way his voice softened when he said her name. The arrangement might have been fake to the world, but every passing day, it began to feel dangerously real. The following week unfolded like a strange truce. The world believed the wedding was only postponed, and for once, the tabloids were quiet. Inside the mansion, an unexpected rhythm took shape. Lila began helping the staff, arranging flowers for the dining room, or reading in the library where sunlight filtered through tall windows. Sometimes Ethan would find her there, barefoot on the carpet, sketching without realizing he was watching. One evening, she walked into his study holding a cup of tea. You have been working for hours, she said. You should eat something. Ethan looked up from a stack of reports, surprise flickering across his face. I do not usually have someone remind me to eat. Well, she said, setting the cup beside him. You do now. Their eyes met for a moment longer than necessary. The air shifted, gentle but undeniable. Ethan cleared his throat. Thank you, Lila. Do not mention it, she replied, smiling faintly. Days turned into nights filled with quiet company, shared meals, brief conversations, the comfort of someone who understood what it meant to live under expectations too heavy to breathe. The mansion no longer felt like a cage. It felt almost human. Then came the charity gala. Ethan's company hosted it every year for hospital funding, and his board insisted he appear with his fiancée to maintain the illusion of normalcy. Lila hesitated when he told her. They will recognize me, she said. I am the girl who ran away. They will see what I see, he said simply. A woman who came back on her own terms. On the night of the event, Lila stood before the mirror in a gown, the color of midnight, her hair swept into soft curls. For the first time, she saw herself not as a runaway, but as someone who could choose where she stood. When Ethan entered the room, he stopped. You look, he caught himself before finishing. Perfect for tonight. Her heart skipped. And you still look like the man I ran from. He smiled slightly. Maybe you ran from the wrong version of me. The car ride to the gala was quiet, filled with the kind of silence that felt electric. When they arrived, cameras flashed, lights burned, and whispers followed them across the red carpet. Ethan's hand found hers naturally, steady and warm. Inside the ballroom, Lila could feel hundreds of eyes watching. A woman nearby whispered, So she came back. Another murmured, He must have forgiven her. Lila lifted her chin. For once, she did not care what they said. Midway through the evening, Ethan stepped onto the stage to deliver his speech. Tonight, he began, is about second chances. Not just for those we help, but for ourselves. His eyes found hers in the crowd. Sometimes walking away is not weakness. It is courage. And sometimes coming back is even braver. The audience applauded, unaware of the story woven beneath his words. When the event ended, Lila joined him on the balcony overlooking the city lights. The night air was cool, the sky soft with distant stars. You meant every word, did you not? She asked. Ethan nodded. Every one. She looked out at the skyline. You said this was all strategy. A temporary lie. But it feels real now. He turned toward her, his voice low. Maybe it always was. The distance between them dissolved in the quiet hum of the city. For a heartbeat, nothing existed except the truth neither could hide anymore. Lila whispered, I am not afraid of them anymore. Ethan reached for her hand. Good, because I am done pretending. And he well. And as the night stretched around them, the fake arrangement that had once protected them, both began to feel like something worth fighting for, something dangerously close to love. The morning after the gala, the world had already decided its next headline. Photos of Ethan and Lila hand in hand flooded every news site. The runaway bride returns, one article read. Another captioned, from scandal to fairy tale. The noise was deafening, but inside the mansion, everything was still. Lila sat by the window with a cup of coffee, scrolling through the comments on her phone. Some were kind, some cruel, but all of them reduced her to a story. They act like they know me, she said quietly. They only know what they want to see. Ethan entered the room, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled. That is the price of being public. They see what fits their headlines. She looked at him. And what do you see? He paused, then said softly, a woman who stopped running. Their eyes met. The weight of his words lingered between them, too honest to ignore. Lila looked away, setting the phone aside. It feels like we are living inside a story written by everyone but us. Then let us rewrite it, he said. Before she could ask what he meant, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardened. It is your father. Lila froze. Do not answer. I have to, Ethan said. If I do not, he will come here. He picked up the call and switched it to speaker. Mr. Monroe's voice filled the room, sharp and cold. Ethan, you have embarrassed this family long enough. Send my daughter home before the press turns us into a circus. She is not a child, Ethan replied evenly. She does not need permission to decide where she belongs. Belongs? Her father spat. She belongs with her family, not hiding behind some billionaire's pity. Lila stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. I am not hiding, father. I am living my own life for once. There was silence on the other end, then a harsh laugh. You think this little rebellion makes you free? You are nothing without the Monroe name. Ethan's patience snapped. That is enough. His tone cut through the air like thunder. Lila does not need your approval. And if you ever speak to her like that again, I will make sure the entire city knows exactly how you treat your daughter. The line went dead. Lila stood motionless, her heart pounding. You should not have done that, she whispered. I do not regret it, he said. Someone needed to protect you. Tears welled in her eyes, not from weakness, but from the shock of being defended for the first time in her life. No one has ever stood up to him for me before. Ethan took a step closer. Then get used to it. I am not your contract, Lila. I am your partner. The word partner hit her deeper than she expected. For a moment, all the walls she had built began to crumble. She looked up at him. This was supposed to be pretend. He smiled faintly. Maybe it was, but pretending stopped feeling like a lie a long time ago. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Rain began to tap gently against the glass, echoing the night they first met. Lila's voice broke the silence. You are risking everything for me. Ethan shook his head. I am not risking anything worth keeping if it means losing you. For the first time since the day she ran away, she felt still, no longer chased, no longer afraid. As the rain poured harder, Lila reached for his hand. He closed his fingers around hers, steady and sure. The storm outside raged, but in that quiet space between them, something irreversible had changed. The contract that once bound them by duty had transformed into something far more dangerous and real love that neither of them had meant to find, and neither could walk away from now. Days passed, and for a short while, peace returned. The tension with her family faded into silence, but silence from the Monroes was never a good sign. Ethan could feel it too. He started coming home later each night, his phone buzzing with messages he never answered in front of her. Lila noticed. One evening, as he stood by the fireplace, staring into the flames, she finally asked, You have been distant. What is happening? Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Your father is not letting go quietly. He has been calling my investors, hinting that I manipulated you into staying. He wants to destroy me through reputation. Her stomach turned. Because of me? Because I refused to play by his rules, Ethan said. Powerful men hate losing control. Lila clenched her fists. He cannot do that. Ethan's voice was calm but heavy. He can try, and he already has. The next morning, it began. News outlets published stories claiming Ethan's company was under investigation. Reporters camped outside the gates. Camera drones hovered over the property. Headlines screamed about corruption, manipulation, betrayal. None of it was true, but truth never mattered when scandal paid better. By noon, Ethan's board demanded an emergency meeting. Lila watched him put on his suit, every movement controlled, precise, like armor being fastened. "I can fix this," he told her. She shook her head. "You should not have to fix this alone." He gave a faint smile. "You have already done enough." His work lacked. When he left, the house felt too large, too quiet. Lila paced the halls, anger building inside her. She had run from her father once, but now she could not keep hiding. Hours later, she showed up at the press conference Ethan was forced to attend. The room was packed, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing. Ethan stood at the podium, his face calm, his jaw tight. He was ready to take the blame for everything just to protect her. Before he could speak, Lila stepped forward. The crowd gasped. She walked straight to the microphone, her voice steady even though her hands trembled. "My name is Lila Monroe, and I am the woman everyone has been talking about." The noise died instantly. Every camera turned to her. "My father wants you to believe Ethan Hale manipulated me," she said. "That is a lie. I ran away because I refused to be sold into a merger. Ethan did not trick me. He gave me a choice when no one else would." Ethan tried to reach for her arm, but she shook her head gently, continuing, "He has nothing to gain from protecting me. In fact, he is losing everything because of it. But that is what makes him different from the world I came from." The room was silent. For the first time, the truth had drowned out the noise. She turned to him then, eyes shining. "You told me once that pretending stopped feeling like a lie. You were right. Because this," she touched his hand, "right there on stage is the only real thing I have ever had." Ethan's composure finally broke. He looked at her, the crowd forgotten, the cameras meaningless. "Lila," he whispered, "you did not have to do this." "I wanted to," she said softly. "I am done hiding behind names and deals. I want the world to know the truth." The redder body sat his walls in the silence walls. He came to red. The flash of cameras returned, but this time, the noise sounded like applause. Ethan took her hand in his, their fingers interlaced. The scandal that had started as an act had turned into a declaration. In front of everyone, Lila had given him back his honor, and in doing so, reclaimed her own. As they walked off the stage together, Ethan leaned close and murmured, "You just burned every bridge behind you." She smiled through the chaos. Then we walked forward, and together they stepped into the blinding light of the cameras, not as a contract, but as two people who had finally stopped pretending. A few months later, the noise had finally faded. The headlines had moved on, the cameras disappeared, and the world that once fed on scandal had found new stories to devour. What remained was quiet, honest, almost fragile peace. Lila stood on the terrace of the Hale estate, the late spring wind brushing through her hair. The city lights glittered below like fallen stars. She could hear the faint hum of life returning to normal, a sound she had once thought she would never love again. Behind her, footsteps approached. She turned and saw Ethan walking toward her, his tie loosened, the weight he used to carry gone from his shoulders. For the first time, he looked free. He stopped beside her. "You know," he said softly, "there was a time I thought this house would always feel like a cage." Lila smiled, her eyes gentle. "It does not anymore." "No," he agreed, "because you filled it with something real." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city breathe below them. The same world that had judged them now had no power left to wound them. Ethan turned to her, his voice quieter. "Do you ever regret it? Running away that night?" She shook her head. "Not for a second. That was the night I finally chose my own life." He nodded, slipping his hand into his pocket. "I have something for you." Lila raised an eyebrow as he pulled out a small, worn sketchbook, the one she had carried the night she ran. He had kept it all this time, the cover still creased from rain. "You left this in the car," he said. "You told me once it was where you drew what freedom looked like. I think you should see what it looks like now." She opened it and found a new page inside. Drawn in his handwriting, a sketch of the two of them standing together, her veil floating in the wind. Beneath it, a single line. "Freedom is not running. It is finding someone who runs beside you. Lila's eyes filled with tears. You drew this? He smiled. Maybe I have learned something from watching you. The Shadow Master Blind Main. The Shadow Master Blind Main. The Shadow Master Blind Main. She laughed softly, pressing the sketchbook to her chest. You did more than watch. You gave me a place to stand. Ethan took her hand, his thumb brushing the back of her fingers. Then let us build the rest of it together. He knelt, not in grandeur or spectacle, but in quiet sincerity. From his pocket, he pulled out a simple gold ring. No contracts, no deals. Just us, if you still want this. Lila stared at him, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. The night air carried the faint scent of rain, just like the night they met. She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. Yes, Ethan. This time I am not running. He stood, sliding the ring onto her finger. Their foreheads met, the world narrowing to the steady rhythm of their breath. Outside, thunder rolled far in the distance. Not a storm, but an echo of where they began. Ethan whispered, You changed everything. 9. Aid protected big. Lila answered softly. No, we changed it together. As the wind swept through the open terrace, the last page of her sketchbook fluttered in her hand, the ink still drying beneath the words that told the truth of their story. Love born from rebellion, freedom found in honesty, and two hearts that refused to be written by anyone else.